Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats. Thank you. Well, good afternoon. I'm Mark Troen. I'm on the faculty of the Masters of Real Estate Development and Urbanism program here at the university. And I'm pleased that this year we're presenting our 7th annual University of Miami Real Estate Initiative results. Before I introduce the team on the stage, I'd like to give a shout out to the faculty team and our advisors who helped make this a reality this year. First and foremost, let me thank Lesley Deutch from John Burns Research and Consulting. She's on the advisory board for our program and also a key contributor to helping guide the students in their research. And of course, there's Dr. Chuck Bohl, the director of the MRED program, and Timothy Hernandez, another one of the faculty members on our team. I'm the lead faculty advisor, and we have this year 6 wonderful students who are going to present the results of the survey that you all participated in. We also see up there Daniel Rodriguez. Daniel was a capable member of last year's team, and he served in the graduate advisory function for this year's team. So let's get a start here. This is our agenda for the afternoon. We're going to review the market as we've done in years past, and then we're going to get deep dive into the policy issues that the students assembled. Starting off our discussion will be Rafael Martinez, and he will discuss current events.
Thank you, Professor. Good afternoon, everyone. As you all know, 2025 has already brought plenty of change. Real estate professionals now face a complex yet opportunity-rich environment, reinforcing the need for strategic insight. We have the return of the Trump administration, potential tax cuts looming, elevated interest rates, and tariff discussions back on the table, all with the potential to reshape deal structures. Amid these changes, South Florida continues to thrive as a hub for talent, capital, and innovation. As we analyze current markets, we turn to the insights of professionals across all facets of real estate to better understand where we are and where we're headed. Investment views across all asset classes except office remain positive. Notably, retail and hospitality, which were neutral last year, have now shifted into bullish territory, with around 44% of respondents expecting higher values for both asset classes. Similar to last year, holding remains as a dominant investment strategy. However, we are noting key shifts in sentiment. Office is moving away from sell, with sell sentiment dropping from 34% to 28%. Meanwhile, multifamily, which was a hold last year, is now a buy, indicating potential future demand.
Thank you, Rafael. Now let's turn our attention to Sofia Henríquez, who will continue our discussion of the market.
Thank you, Professor Troen. Up here on the side is your response to South Florida's real estate economic cycle for 2025. Despite headwinds such as insurance, interest rates continuing to rise, construction costs, expensive land price, the sentiment is firm across all 3 counties that we are entering an expansion phase for 2025. We asked you, as per a survey, to rate each of these asset classes for the prior 18 months to the next 5 years. Industrial and multifamily continuing to stay strong demand, while office, not so much, but I'm sure that's not a surprise, with weakened demand for the prior 18 months and also to the next 5 years. But finally, making the leap from stable demand to strong demand, we have retail and hospitality. When examining a list of factors that may deter potential investors to South Florida, expensive land prices and high rents are at the top of the list, illustrating significant cost barriers, such as operational cost and smaller margins, which may lead investors thinking twice when investing here in South Florida. Just below it, we have availability of workforce, environmental concerns, regulations for housing availability, and traffic and mobility concerns. Altogether are a list of factors that deter potential investors.
Great, thank you, Sofia. And now, focusing in on traffic and mobility, we have Anthony Fioravanti.
Hello, everyone. I'm sure you all know that traffic and mobility is always a concern when it comes to real estate. So let's take a glance at the Global Mobility Index, which tracks how people get around. Globally, half of the population relies on cars for daily travel. About a quarter has access to and uses public transportation, and the other quarter lives in a walkable or bikeable community. In North America, however, lags far behind, and we are extremely car dependent. Less than 10% of people have access to other modes of transportation. Now, why is that? A lot of it has to do with our allocation of transportation funds. The Florida Department of Transportation's budget is $15.6 billion, but only 6% of that is allocated towards public transit. We asked you for your opinion on how much of these funds you think should be allocated towards transit, and the response was 30%, which would equate to roughly $5 billion. Now, any increase in funds could help expand our public transportation system, making it a real alternative to driving and ultimately reduce traffic congestion.
Great, thank you very much, Anthony. Appreciate that. Now let's turn our attention to Mariemilia Cedeño.
One more? There's one more?
You want to have another comment?
Yeah,
Let's go
one
back
more.
to Anthony.
Next slide, please.
Sure, let's do that.
Now, I'm sure many of you have found yourself in a sea of parking similar to the one on the screen when going to the mall or a sports stadium. But what you're really looking at here is wasted space. In a place like South Florida, land is limited and valuable. So why are you dedicating so much of it to half-empty parking lots? Parking minimums are an outdated policy that force developers to build excess parking whether there is demand or not. We asked your opinion on these policies, and the majority supported eliminating them. Relieving this parking lot burden can unlock land for better uses and allow the market to decide how much parking is actually needed.
Great, thank you again, Anthony. Now let's turn our attention to Mariemilia Cedeño, who will discuss topics that are really current today, including immigration and restrictions.
Thank you so much, Professor Troen. Between 2018 and 2022, over 100,000 immigrants migrated to Broward, Miami-Dade, and Palm Beach counties, many of which have worked, invested, and purchased real estate. We asked you whether immigration benefits or hinders the market, and responses were overwhelmingly positive, with 88% of respondents believing that it positively impacts the market, and only a 9% made up of investment fund managers, consultants, students, and financial analysts believing that it has a negative impact. This perceived negative impact is exactly why U.S. Florida Senate Bill 264 aims to limit foreign control over Florida's real estate. When asked whether additional restrictions should be placed on specified foreign buyers, a majority of respondents believe that moderate restrictions is enough. However, 22% of respondents believe that no restrictions are needed, and 13% believe that significant restrictions are needed. Interestingly enough, brokers and developers believed in no restrictions, while consultants and investment fund managers believed in significant restrictions. Now, switching gears a little bit, the U.S. Census Bureau estimates that by the year 2045, over 40% of South Florida's real estate population will be 55 years and older. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not have enough supply to keep up with the forecasted demand of senior housing. So we asked you, what would be the best way to incentivize the development of senior housing, with a 50% tax abatement voted mostly by developers as taking the lead, and a density bonus, right, coming second, voted mostly by brokers.
Great, thank you very much, Mariemilia. Now let's hear from Kalea Sanders. She's going to discuss in greater depth issues such as insurance and resiliency.
Thank you, Professor. Climate change has exacerbated natural disasters, leading to a mass exit of private insurance companies out of the Florida market. Not only rising homeowner premiums, but overall development costs for investors. Florida legislation has put in place some reforms, but unfortunately this issue is still ongoing. And as you can see, about 77% of investors support the idea of government incentives to help bring back some of these companies. Resiliency is a critical strategy in navigating the effects of climate change in South Florida. Key initiatives like Miami Beach's stormwater management system, sea level rise mitigation, and flood prevention infrastructure all aim to navigate this issue. Although growing resiliency developments is necessary, as you can see, Miami-Dade's tax allocation does not specify how much funds will be dedicated towards resiliency projects. Whereas on contrast, you guys supported the idea about 26% of these funds should be allocated towards a more resilient South Florida. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, better known as FEMA, has created flood maps to help educate communities on their risk when it comes to natural disasters. Although these maps are a very good foundation, they don't necessarily incorporate information from recent storms and future projections, leaving a lot of communities unaware. And our research aims to look past these maps to help understand where sea levels are rising and how they will continue to affect the South Florida market.
Great, thank you, Kalea. And now we turn to Giaffon Lamb, who will share with us the research that the team did in showing us climate risk maps.
Thank you, Professor Troen. Good afternoon, everyone. These FEMA maps present what's happening right now in Miami-Dade, where flood insurance is required by law. However, risks do not stop here. Homes outside these areas, like in Coral Gables, may still face flooding. Adding a storm surge in red introduces more threats to Miami. Coastal areas like Key Biscayne and Miami Beach may face major floodings during hurricanes. FEMA flood zones are based on the past, but their storm surge represents what's happening right now. The following map exposes the sea level rise in blue, showing projections of 2050. Areas like Coral Gables may face all three risks: floods, storm surge, and sea level rise. On the other hand, other neighborhoods like Little Havana or Midtown may seem safer. It is important to consider all these risks for our future planning. The next map introduces or exposes your holdings according to your responses, most of them in Coral Gables and in downtown. Prime areas, but at high risk. Is a real estate project at risk? At Fort Lauderdale, our focus shifts to, in Broward, our focus shifts to Fort Lauderdale, where coastal areas are the most affected ones. These critical communities or areas are extremely important, and they will face all three risks. And finally, in Palm Beach, coastal areas are still the most affected ones. But it's important to consider that Palm Beach, compared to Miami-Dade and Broward, is the safest county, and that is because of its higher elevation. This map provides a better understanding of how we can solve or how we can deal with the risks that South Florida faces.
Thank you, Giaffon. And now let's turn back to Rafael, who will summarize our key takeaways.
Thank you, Professor. So overall optimism across the board is rising. Although office remains weak, sentiment is shifting. On transportation, there's support for investment, with traffic being the major concern. On policy, there's support for incentives on affordable and senior housing, as well as parking reductions. And finally, on climate, as Giaffon just mentioned, the two factors to worry about are sea level and flood rise, which demand urgent and coordinated action. Now, we remind you that this survey was built upon your responses, and you have the power to advocate for policy change. Also, the university has resources. So if you want to learn more about real estate and resilience, you can go to resilience.miami.edu. Thank you.
So now, thank you. Let me hold the applause for just a minute. And if you can take out your cameras, aim them at the screen. If you take a picture of that QR code, you will be able to get a copy of this particular survey and also be in line to get our final report, which will be issued at a later date. So let's give a great round of applause to our future leaders here on the real estate team.